This is Land of Havilah, Judges 18. In the last chapter, Micah hired a Levite to be his personal priest, to attend his personal house of idols, and he said, "Now I know that Yahweh will do good to me." The history continues. Father, please open our eyes and ears to the Scripture. Amen. Verse 1. In those days there was no king in Israel. In those days the tribe of the Danites sought an inheritance to dwell in, for to that day their inheritance had not fallen to them among the tribes of Israel. Comment: Joshua assigned territory to Dan, Joshua 19:40, but Dan wasn't able to take possession of their assignment. The Amorites on the coastal plain kept Dan pushed up into the hill country, Judges 1:34. Therefore the Danites are looking to obtain more land for themselves. Verse 2. The children of Dan sent 5 of their family from their whole number, men of valor, from Zorah and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to search it. They said to them, "Go, explore the land." They came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. Comment: a lot of the promised land remains unconquered. The 5 chosen men of Dan are on an expedition to identify some Canaanite land that they can invade and conquer. On their way, they stopped by Micah's house in Ephraim. Verse 3. When they were by the house of Micah, they knew the voice of the young man, the Levite. Comment: they knew the voice of the Levite. They didn't know the Levite personally. Most likely they recognized him by his accent that he was a Levite. Still in verse 3. So they went over there and said to him, "Who brought you here? What do you do in this place? What do you have here?" Comment: the 5 Danites are already thinking about hiring this Levite themselves. They're asking him about the deal he's getting from Micah. Verse 4. He said to them, "Thus and thus has Micah dealt with me, and he has hired me, and I am become his priest." They said to him, "Please ask counsel of God, that we may know whether our way which we go shall be prosperous." The priest said to them, "Go in peace. Your way in which you go is before Yahweh." Comment: the Danites would like to have the Levite around all the time so that God will support them. But the Levite's connection to God is non-existent. He's an idol-worshiping quack. The Levite assures them they'll be successful and that Yahweh is with them. Verse 7. Then the 5 men departed and came to Laish. Comment: the 5 explorers have gone far past Dan and far past the hill country of Ephraim. They're about 110 miles north of Dan, at the Canaanite city of Laish, which is within the Promised Land, Joshua 1:4, and is possibly within the boundaries that Joshua assigned to Naphtali, Joshua 19:32 through 39. But neither Naphtali or any of the Israelites has conquered it yet. The 5 of them came there, and still in verse 7, and saw the people who were there, how they lived in safety in the way of the Sidonians, quiet and secure, for there was no one in the land possessing authority that might put them to shame in anything. And they were far from the Sidonians and had no dealings with anyone else. Comment: there's no one putting Laish to shame. In other words, Laish is independent. They're not subject to anyone. Therefore, in case of attack, no one will come to their defense. The Sidonians are too far away to defend them. Verse 8. They came to their brothers at Zorah and Eshtaol. Comment: they went home. Still in verse 8. They said, "Arise, and let's go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. Do you stand still? Don't be slothful to go and to enter in to possess the land. When you go, you will come to an unsuspecting people, and the land is large, for God has given it into your hand, a place where there is no lack of anything that is in the earth." Comment: still, all the way up to the modern day, this area is unusually green and well watered. Verse 11. The family of the Danites set out from Zorah and Eshtaol with 600 men armed with weapons of war. Comment: an army of 600 has set out with their families for Laish. Verse 12. They went up and encamped in Kiriath Jearim in Judah. Therefore they called that place Mahanadan to this day. Behold, it is behind Kiriath Jearim. Comment: soon after leaving home, they made camp along the way in Judah. The place was thereafter called Mahanadan, which means camp of Dan. Still making their way north, verse 13, they passed from there to the hill country of Ephraim and came to the house of Micah. Then the 5 men who went to spy out the country of Laish answered and said to their brothers, "Do you know that there is in these houses an ephod and teraphim and a carved image and a molten image? Now therefore consider what you have to do." Comment: in other words, the five are saying, I think we can all agree we need spiritual support and we can get it right here. All we have to do is take it. Verse 15. They went over there and came to the house of the young Levite man, even to the house of Micah, and asked him how he was doing. The 600 men armed with their weapons of war, who were of the children of Dan, stood by the entrance of the gate. Comment: the 600 men of Dan know what the five are doing, and they're standing guard to make sure none of the locals interfere. Verse 17. The 5 men who went to spy out the land went up and came in there and took the engraved image, the ephod, the teraphim, and the molten image, and the priest stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. When these went in to Micah's house and took the engraved image, the ephod, the teraphim, and the molten image, the priest said to them, What are you doing? They said to him, Hold your peace, put your hand on your mouth, and go with us, and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be priest to the house of one man, or to be priest to a tribe and a family in Israel? The priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod, the teraphim, and the engraved image, and went with the people. Comment: the priest turned his back on his agreement with Micah. He sees a better opportunity being a priest for an entire tribe. He's leaving a smaller church for a bigger church, so to speak. It has nothing to do with the will of Yahweh. There's theft, there's breach of contract, there's idolatry, so Yahweh doesn't have anything to do with any of it, except we know that he would condemn the entire situation. Luke 16:10, quote, He who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much, end quote. The Levite was dishonest in his little job with Micah, and he'll be dishonest in his big job with the tribe of Dan as well. There's no one of character in sight, not Micah, the Levite, or the Danites. Verse 21. So they turned and departed and put the little ones, the livestock, and the goods before them. Comment: the soldiers were walking behind their families and livestock onward to Laish. Verse 22. When they were a good way from the house of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house gathered together and overtook the children of Dan. Comment: Micah has gathered his neighbors and chased after the Danites. Verse 23. As they cried to the children of Dan, they turned their faces and said to Micah, What ails you that you come with such a company? Comment: Micah and his neighbors caught up with the Danites, and the Danites said to Micah, What's your problem? Verse 24. He said, You have taken away my gods which I made, and the priest, and have gone away. What more do I have? How can you ask me, What ails you? The children of Dan said to him, Don't let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall on you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household. Comment: the Danites said, Go away before somebody kills you. Verse 26. The children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. Comment: that's the last of Micah. He lost everything, and now coming up, the Danites go on to Laish. Verse 27. They took that which Micah had made and the priest whom he had, and came to Laish, to a people quiet and unsuspecting, and struck them with the edge of the sword. Then they burned the city with fire. There was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no dealings with anyone else. And it was in the valley that lies by Beth Rehob. They built the city and lived in it. They called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born to Israel. However, the name of the city used to be Laish. Comment: they took Laish, killed everyone, burned it, rebuilt it, and renamed it Dan. Verse 30. The children of Dan set up for themselves the engraved image, and Jonathan the son of Gershom, the son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. Comment: it turns out that the Levite's name was Jonathan, Moses' grandson, which means this history isn't in sequence with the history up through chapter 16. Rather, it took place very soon after the time of Joshua. Israel served Yahweh all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, Joshua 24:31. So it's just incredible that Israel turned away in the very next generation so quickly, and with Moses' own grandson leading the way. But it's a fulfillment of Yahweh's word to Moses. Quote, Yahweh said to Moses, Behold, you shall sleep with your fathers. This people will rise up and play the prostitute after the strange gods of the land. where they go to be among them, and will forsake me, and break my covenant which I have made with them. Then my anger shall be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured, and many evils and troubles shall come on them. So that they will say in that day, Haven't these evils come on us because our God is not among us? I will surely hide my face in that day for all the evil which they have done, in that they have turned to other gods." End quote. So why didn't we hear from Yahweh all through this history, the history of Micah, the Levite, and the Danites? It's because Yahweh has forsaken Israel. He's hiding his face. And we know from the rest of the prophecy that many evils and troubles will follow, that they will be devoured. Verse 30 already told us what's going to happen. Someone will conquer the land and eventually take all of Israel into captivity. Until that happens to Dan, Jonathan's descendants will function as illegitimate priests of Dan. Verse 31. So they set up for themselves Micah's engraved image which he had made, and it remained all the time that God's house was in Shiloh. Comment: God's house in Shiloh is the legitimate house of God. It's the tabernacle. Meanwhile, the Danites had a temple of their own with a silver idol in it. This is a disappointing chapter, but instructive. In fact, almost all of Judges is disappointing. Let's not disappoint God ourselves. Judges 19 is next at landofhavilah.net. Judges 19. This is the map of Judges 18. The Danites were from Zorah and Eshtaol. Zorah here, Eshtaol here. Micah's house was somewhere in the hill country of Ephraim. The 5 explorers went to Laish here. They came back to Dan, raised an army of 600. On the way to Laish, they stopped in Judah near Kiriath Jearim here, then stopped by Micah's house in the hill country of Ephraim, continued to Laish, conquered it, and renamed it Dan. It's now called Tel Dan. As we zoom in, we can see it's very green and suitable for agriculture. Zooming out, the tabernacle at this time was at Shiloh here in the hill country of Ephraim. Judges 19 is next.